Hey everyone, Bill Worrell here. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at a few basic jazz shapes. Now, whether or not your goal is to play jazz versus any other style of music, learning even a handful of these chords will be invaluable to you. In fact, you can find them in practically every style of music. Even styles like punk and metal will occasionally use these chords. So here's what the first example sounds like. Now, make sure you've downloaded the PDF for this lesson, which you can find in the description below, and let's play this a little slower. Now, for this lesson, we're going to start with a basic Freddie Green style of comping. Freddie Green is probably best known as the guitarist in Count Basie's band, and he would strum mainly quarter notes with a slight staccato or short feel, like this. And feel free to throw in an upbeat on the and a 4 for some extra feel. So here are the chords we'll use. We've got B flat major 7. We use our first finger to mute the A string, and we don't want to play the high E string either. Just these 4 strings that we're fretting. Next we have C minor 7, and we'll again use our second finger to mute the A string. We could include the high E string in this, but to me that's a little cumbersome. Sounds warmer on the lower strings anyway. Next we'll have F7, and I'll mention that F7 is also called a dominant 7th chord, or any 7th chord, whether it's D7, F7, this means it's a dominant 7th chord. In other words, we have a flatted 7th, unlike the B flat major 7th. We'll have to talk about scale theory another time, but just recognize major 7 versus dominant 7th, or natural 7th versus flatted 7th in a chord. So in our chord progression, we'll play 4 beats of B flat major 7, 2 beats of C minor 7, 2 beats of F7. And we'll repeat that. Now, one of the really interesting things about jazz is that we can and will substitute chords in a progression like this. We'll save the theory for another lesson, but let's take a look at a substitution for each of these 3 chords. So in place of B flat major 7, we'll play simply B flat 6. Again, using our second finger to mute the A string and avoiding the high E string. For C minor 7, we'll play C minor 9. Barring across the 8th fret, just a half bar, and dropping our pinky or 3rd finger on the 10th fret. And in place of the F7, we'll play F9. And this can also be called a dominant 9th chord. Similar to a dominant 7th, we have dominant 9th, or simply F9. And here's the progression with these substitutions. Now let's learn a couple new shapes and mix up the rhythm a bit. You know, playing all quarter notes works well if you're playing in a big band, but if you're playing in a combo, it might be best to mix things up a little bit. So let's start with the chord shapes. We've got B flat major 7. This time our root is on the 5th string instead of the 6th string. Okay? This is a very common chord in rock, pop, jazz, any number of styles. Then we've got G7. Now, unlike the F7 shape, which you could move up a whole step to G, from F7 to G, we're going to play this down with the root on the 6th string instead of root on the 5th string. Again, we'll use our first finger to mute the A string and avoid the high E. Next we'll have C minor 7, but in this case, rather than playing with the root on the E string down here, we'll play with the root on the A string. And last, we'll play F7, just like we did the G7, but down a whole step. And here it is with the rhythm we'll use. I'm going to put my pick down and play with my thumb and fingers, but feel free to use your pick if that's more comfortable. Now in the next couple lessons, we'll talk about using only partial chord voicings, or shell voicings, along with expanding what we just learned into a full progression called rhythm changes. Have fun, and we'll see you next time.